The massive warship drifted through the cold darkness of space, its hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge, his scaled hands gripping the metal rail as he stared at the blue and green planet rotating. Slowly on the main screen, his yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the third planet from the star these primitive beings called Sol. "Such a small world," he hissed to his second-in-command, Captain Zalkith. "Look at how they have divided their landmasses with imaginary lines. They fight each other over resources while sitting on a planet rich enough to feed a dozen civilizations." Captain Zalkith nodded, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the recycled air of the bridge. "The reconnaissance probes show they have barely left their own atmosphere, Admiral. Their fastest ships take months to reach their nearest moon. They know nothing of faster-than-light travel." Admiral Vextar turned away from the screen, his long coat sweeping behind him as he walked to the tactical display. Holographic images of Earth's continents floated in the air, marked with red dots showing major population centers. 12 billion inhabitants, he said, reading from the data streams. All packed into cities like prey animals in a pen. The bridge hummed with activity as reptilian officers worked at their stations. The third conquest fleet of the Zephrian Empire had conquered worlds across 12 star systems, each victory adding to their growing territory. Earth would be the 13th, and Admiral Vextar expected it to be the easiest. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Thexron from the communications station, "we are receiving multiple signals from the planet. They appear to be entertainment broadcasts and primitive data transmissions." Admiral Vextar walked over, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. "Show me." The screens around the bridge flickered to life, showing images from Earth, humans, in colorful clothing spoken to cameras, their flat teeth visible as they smiled. Children played in parks while adults worked in tall buildings made of glass and steel. They broadcast their daily activities to each other, Lieutenant Thexron explained. They seem to find entertainment in watching other members of their species perform simple tasks. Admiral Vextar laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Primitive creatures obsessed with their own kind. They have no concept of the greater universe beyond their tiny world. Far across the galaxy on the neutral station that served as the meeting place for the Galaxy Council, Ambassador Kreoloth watched the same feeds with growing concern. The insectoid diplomat's compound eyes reflected the blue light of the holographic displays as he studied the Zephrian fleet approaching Earth's solar system. "They have no idea what they are about to face," he whispered to his aide, a young female from his species named Veltar. "The humans may appear primitive, but appearances can be deceiving." Veltar's antennae twitched with confusion. "Sir, the Zephrians have conquered 12 civilizations. Their military might is beyond question. What could these humans possibly do against such a force?" Ambassador Kreoloth was quiet for a long moment, his memory reaching back to the early days of galactic civilization. "There are old records, Veltar. Stories from explorers who visited the system centuries ago. They spoke of a species that learned quickly, adapted faster than any other race they had encountered." "But sir," Veltar protested, "look at their technology. They still use chemical rockets to leave their planet. They have no energy weapons, no force fields, no faster-than-light communication." The ambassador's eyes never left the display showing Earth. "That is what concerns me most," he said softly. "A species that has had contact with our explorers for centuries, yet appears to have made no technological progress. Either they are truly primitive or they are hiding something." On Earth, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the North American Defense Network. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens showing data streams from satellites positioned throughout the solar system. The early warning systems had detected the approaching alien fleet 3 days ago, and now the final preparations were underway. "Sir," called out Sergeant Linda Clark from her position at the communications console, "we're receiving the final confirmation codes from the other continental commands." "Everyone is ready." Captain Morrison nodded, his weathered face showing the strain of the past 72 hours. Patch me through to Geneva. It's time to brief the World Council. The main screen flickered to life, showing the faces of world leaders gathered in the underground bunker beneath the Swiss city. President Mary Collins of the United States spoke first. Captain Morrison, what's our current status? Ma'am, the alien fleet will reach Earth's outer atmosphere in approximately 18 hours. Long-range scans show approximately 200 ships of various sizes, with the largest measuring nearly 3 kilometers in length. Prime Minister Henry Davies of the United Kingdom leaned forward. Any attempt at communication? Not yet, sir, but based on the formation patterns and approach. Vectors, this is definitely an invasion force. They're following standard conquest protocols that we've observed in their previous campaigns. Dr. Lisa Shang, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, activated her own display. Based on our analysis of their previous conquests, they'll likely demand immediate surrender. When that fails, they'll begin surgical strikes on major population centers to demonstrate their power. Chancellor Klaus Weber of Germany looked grim. And our response? Captain Morrison's expression hardened. We follow Protocol 7, full defensive measures, but we let them make the first move. The world needs to see that we didn't start this fight. President Collins nodded slowly. How long can we maintain the facade? Intelligence estimates suggest they'll begin their assault within 6 hours of entering our atmosphere. After that, we'll have no choice but to reveal our true capabilities. Back on the Zephrian flagship, Admiral Vexstar reviewed the final attack plans with his senior staff. The holographic display showed Earth surrounded by red arrows indicating the approach vectors for different squadron groups. Group Alpha will target the largest population centers on the continent they call North America, he explained, his claw pointing to various cities. Group Beta will focus on the European landmass, while Group Gamma handles the Asian territories. Captain Zalkith studied the display. What about their military installations, Admiral? Irrelevant, Admiral Vexstar replied dismissively. Their most advanced weapons are chemical explosives and primitive projectile launchers. Our shields can deflect anything they might throw at us. And if they attempt to flee the planet? Admiral Vexstar's laugh filled the bridge. With what ships? Their fastest vessels barely qualify as atmospheric craft. No, Captain, this species has nowhere to run. They will submit or they will die. The bridge fell silent as the fleet continued. Its approach to Earth? In 18 hours, Admiral Vexstar would discover that some species were not meant to be conquered. The first Zephrian ships broke through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their hulls glowing red from the heat of entry. Admiral Vexstar watched from his flagship as the blue sky of Earth filled his viewscreen, white clouds swirling beneath his invasion fleet. Begin transmission, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered civilizations across the galaxy. All frequencies, all languages we have recorded from their broadcasts. The bridge crew worked quickly and within moments, Admiral Vexstar's image was being broadcast across every television, radio, and communication device on Earth. His scaled face appeared on screens in homes, offices, and public spaces around the world. Primitive beings of the third planet. His translated voice boomed through Earth's airwaves. I am Admiral Vexstar of the Zephrian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will submit to imperial rule or face complete annihilation. You have 1 of your hours to respond with your surrender. In the underground command center beneath Colorado, Captain Jake Morrison watched the broadcast with his team. The alien's yellow eyes stared out from the main screen, cold and confident. Around him, dozens of military personnel worked at their stations, their faces tense but determined. Sir, called out Lieutenant Ben Parker from the communications desk, we're getting responses from world leaders. They're all giving the same answer. Captain Morrison nodded grimly. Put me through to the President. President Mary Collins appeared on the secure channel, her face showing the weight of the decision she was about to make. Behind her, the emergency bunker buzzed with activity as advisors and military leaders prepared for what was coming. Captain Morrison, she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances, the World Council has voted. We're going to tell them exactly what we think of their generous offer. The response was broadcast on the same frequencies the aliens had used. President Collins sat at a simple desk, the flags of Earth's nations displayed behind her. She looked directly into the camera, her expression calm but determined. "To the forces currently occupying our airspace," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the planet, "we have considered your offer carefully. Our response is simple: we decline. Earth is our home, and we will defend it. If you want our world, come and take it." The message was clear and direct, spoken in the kind of language that needed no translation. Around the world, people watched their leader's defiant response, and something stirred in the hearts of 12 billion humans. Admiral Vextar stared at the transmission in disbelief. In 12 previous conquests, no species had ever refused his initial offer. Most surrendered immediately when they saw the size of his fleet. Others tried to negotiate for better terms. None had ever told him to come and take their world. "Sir," Captain Zolketh said carefully, "perhaps they do not understand the situation. Should we demonstrate our power?" Admiral Vextar's claws scraped against the metal rail as his grip tightened. "Yes, begin the demonstration. Target their largest cities, but use minimal force. We want them to understand our power, not destroy what will soon be ours." The first wave of Zephrian fighters descended toward Earth's major cities. Sleek vessels with energy weapons powered up their systems as they approached targets in New York, London, Tokyo, and Moscow. The pilots were confident, having performed similar demonstrations on 11 other worlds above New York City. Lieutenant Colonel Peter Hayes climbed into the cockpit of his F-47 Raptor, one of Earth's newest atmospheric fighters. Around him, pilots from bases across the continent were doing the same, their aircraft launching from hidden facilities that had been constructed over the past 3 decades. "Falcon leader to all units," he spoke into his radio. "Remember your training? These things are fast, but they fly in predictable patterns. Every encounter we've studied shows they expect their enemies to panic and scatter." Major Kelly Foster, his wingman, responded from her own fighter. "Copy that, Falcon leader. Intelligence says they've never faced coordinated resistance before." The first engagement began over Manhattan as Zephrian fighters opened fire on the city's tallest buildings. Their energy beams struck the structures, but instead of collapsing, the buildings absorbed the impact. Hidden defensive systems activated, and the city's skyline suddenly bristled with weapons that had been disguised as communications equipment and architectural features. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes dove his fighter toward a group of alien craft, his targeting system locking onto the lead ship. "Engaging hostile targets," he reported, squeezing the trigger. His aircraft's weapons fired, not the chemical projectiles the aliens expected, but energy beams that struck the Zephrian fighter's shields with surprising force. The alien pilot found himself facing something he had never encountered in 12 conquests, an enemy that fought back effectively. His fighter shuddered under the impact, warning lights flashing across his console. He tried to turn away, but more human fighters appeared from all directions, their attack patterns coordinated and precise. "This is impossible," the Zephrian pilot transmitted to his squadron leader. "Their weapons are more advanced than the intelligence reports indicated." The same scene played out above cities around the world. Zephrian fighters that had expected to face primitive aircraft instead found themselves in intense battles with human pilots who seemed to know exactly how to counter their tactics. In London, squadron leader James Wright led his pilots in a formation that the aliens had never seen before. The human fighters moved like a single organism, each pilot knowing exactly where his wingmen were without needing to communicate. When one fighter took damage, the others immediately adapted their positions to cover him. "And they're learning our attack patterns," reported Captain Morketh to Admiral Vextar from his damaged fighter above Tokyo. "Every time we try a new approach, they counter it within minutes." Admiral Vextar watched the battle reports with growing alarm. His forces were not losing, but they were not winning either. The humans were holding their own against an invasion fleet that had conquered star systems. "Sir," Captain Zolketh said, studying the tactical displays, They're using their entire planet as a weapons platform. Every city, every communication tower, every satellite appears to be part of their defensive network. The truth was becoming clear to the Zephrian command. Earth was not a primitive world caught unprepared. It was a fortress that had been waiting for exactly this moment. Every aspect of human civilization had been designed with one purpose: to repel invasion. Dr. Lisa Shang watched the battle from her position in the command center, her screen showing the engagement from multiple angles. "They're fighting exactly as we predicted," she told Captain Morrison. "Their tactics haven't changed in 12 conquests. They're not adapting." Captain Morrison nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Then it's time to show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." The battle for Earth had begun, and the Zephrian Empire was about to learn that some species were not meant to be conquered. The battle had been raging for 3 days, and Admiral Vexstar was beginning to understand that this was not going according to plan. His forces had expected to control Earth's major cities within hours, but instead found themselves locked in continuous combat with human defenders who seemed to anticipate every move. "Status report," he demanded from his position on the bridge, his scaled hands gripping the command chair as another wave of damage reports flooded in from his fleet. Captain Zalkith looked up from his tactical display, his expression grim. "We have lost 47 fighters and 12 assault cruisers. The humans continue to resist with increasing effectiveness." Admiral Vexstar's yellow eyes narrowed. "How is this possible? Their technology should be centuries behind ours." "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Zephrian from the communications station, "we're intercepting human military transmissions. They appear to be coordinating their defenses through a planet-wide network." "Above the lunar surface," Commander Rick Thompson guided his squadron of fighters through the vacuum of space, his eyes focused on the Zephrian ships attempting to establish a forward base on Earth's moon. Luna Base had been humanity's best-kept secret for 30 years, hidden beneath the moon's surface and designed specifically for this moment. "Luna Squadron, this is Commander Thompson," he spoke into his radio. "Target the lead cruiser's engine section. Intelligence indicates their power systems are vulnerable to concentrated fire." His sister, Lieutenant Commander Amy Thompson, responded from her position coordinating Earth's surface defenses. "Rick, we're tracking 17 more ships moving toward your position. They're trying to flank you." "Copy that, Amy. We're ready for them." The human fighters moved with precision that surprised the Zephrian pilots. Every maneuver was calculated, every attack coordinated with surgical accuracy. The aliens found themselves facing opponents who seemed to know their weaknesses before they knew them themselves. On Earth's surface, the battle had evolved into something the Zephrians had never encountered before. Every human city had become a fortress, every communication tower a weapon, every satellite a part of an integrated defense network that spanned the entire planet. Dr. Robert Kim monitored the battle from his position deep inside NORAD, surrounded by banks of computers that processed information from thousands of sources across the globe. "They're regrouping for another major assault," he reported to the command staff. "Same formation as the previous 3 attempts?" General Frank Rodriguez studied the tactical display, watching as Zephrian forces moved into attack positions above major population centers. "They're not learning from their mistakes. Every attack follows the same pattern." "Because they've never had to learn," Dr. Kim replied. "In 12 previous conquests, their enemies either surrendered immediately or were crushed within hours. They have no experience with prolonged resistance." The truth was more complex than the Zephrians realized. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, ever since the first contact with galactic civilization. Every aspect of Earth's development had been guided by one overriding principle: never again would humanity be vulnerable to external threats. Codebreaker specialist Maria Santos worked at her station, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she decoded Zephrian communications in real time. "General, I'm intercepting fleet communications. They're preparing to deploy what they call planet cracker weapons." The command center fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Zephrians were preparing to destroy Earth rather than admit Defeat. How long do we have? General Rodriguez asked. Approximately 6 hours, sir. They need to move their heavy weapons platforms into position. General Rodriguez turned to the communication officer. Get me a secure channel to all Continental commands. It's time to activate the Luna Protocol. What the Zephrians did not know was that humanity's true defensive capabilities had been hidden for this exact moment. The battle they had been fighting was only the beginning. Earth's real weapons had remained concealed, waiting for the moment when the enemy would commit to total destruction. Captain Steve Davis commanded the Orbital Defense Platform Armstrong Station, which had been disguised as a research facility for 20 years. As the Luna Protocol activated, the station's true nature was revealed. Massive weapons arrays emerged from what had appeared to be scientific equipment, and the platform's reactor came online with enough power to supply a small city. Armstrong Station to all units, he broadcast on the secure military frequency. Orbital defense platforms are now active. Luna Base, confirm your status. From the moon's surface, Commander Rick Thompson's voice came back strong and clear. Luna Base operational, Armstrong Station. The rabbit is out of the hat. Across the solar system, installations that had been hidden for decades began to reveal themselves. Asteroid mining stations opened to reveal weapons platforms. Deep space. Monitoring posts activated defensive systems that had been dormant for 20 years. The entire solar system had been turned into a fortress. Admiral Vexstar watched in horror as his tactical display lit up with new contacts. Hundreds of human installations that had been invisible moments before now appeared on his sensors, all of them armed and moving into attack positions. This is impossible, he whispered, his voice barely audible on the bridge. The intelligence reports showed a primitive civilization barely capable of spaceflight. Captain Zalkith stared at the display, his own disbelief evident. Sir, they were hiding their true capabilities. Everything we observed was designed to make us underestimate them. But why? Admiral Vexstar demanded. Why would they appear weak when they possess such power? The answer came from an unexpected source. The human communication networks, which the Zephrians had been monitoring throughout the battle, suddenly carried a new message. It was broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Zephrian language directly to the invasion fleet. Admiral Vexstar, the voice said, belonging to a human the Zephrians had never seen before. This is Ambassador John Patterson of the United Earth Government. We have been monitoring your communications since you entered our solar system. We know about your planet cracker weapons, and we know about your plans to destroy our world. Admiral Vexstar's blood ran cold. The humans had been listening to everything. You made a critical error in judgment, Admiral, the human voice continued. You assumed that because we appeared primitive, we were helpless. You forgot that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who lets you think you're winning. The Zephrian fleet found itself surrounded by human forces that had appeared as if from nowhere. Ships that had been hidden in the asteroid belt, weapons platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites, and defensive systems that had been built into the very fabric of human civilization. You chose to invade Earth, Ambassador Patterson's voice concluded. Now you will learn why that was a mistake. The tide of battle had turned, and the Zephrian Empire was about to face the full fury of a species that had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. The moment Admiral Vexstar had dreaded finally arrived as Earth's moon began to crack open like a massive egg. What the Zephrians had believed to be a natural satellite was revealing itself as something far more terrifying, a weapons platform that had been under construction for 50 years. Sir, Captain Zalkith reported, his voice shaking as he stared at the tactical display. The moon is not what we thought it was. Admiral Vexstar watched in horror as sections of the lunar surface split apart, revealing enormous rail guns that had been built into the moon's core. Energy readings from the satellite spiked beyond anything his sensors had ever recorded from a single installation. Captain Steve Davis stood on the command deck of what had once been called Armstrong Station, now revealed as the primary control center for humanity's most ambitious defensive project. Around him, technicians worked at stations that controlled weapons systems spread across the entire solar system. "Luna base to all Earth forces," he announced into his communicator. "Operation Moonrise is now active. All defensive platforms are online and ready for coordinated strike." The transformation was breathtaking and terrifying. Mountains on the moon's surface folded back like flower petals, exposing weapon systems that dwarfed anything the Zephrians had brought to the battle. Energy collectors that had been disguised as research equipment began channeling power from Earth's sun itself, feeding the massive guns that now aimed at the invasion fleet. Commander Lisa Martinez piloted her stealth fighter through the asteroid belt, where she had been waiting for 3 days with her squadron. Her ships had been hidden among the rocks, their heat signatures masked and their energy emissions dampened to nothing. Now, as the Zephrian fleet found itself surrounded, her moment had finally come. "Ghost Squadron, this is Commander Martinez," she spoke into her radio. "Target the command ships. Intelligence indicates they have no backup command structure once the flagship is disabled." Her fighters moved like shadows through space, their advanced stealth technology keeping them invisible to Zephrian sensors until they were already in attack position. The alien fleet had been so focused on Earth that they had never considered the possibility of an attack from behind. The first strike came without warning. Ghost Squadron's energy weapons struck the Zephrian command vessels with devastating accuracy, their shots aimed at critical systems that would disable rather than destroy. The humans wanted prisoners, not corpses. Admiral Vextar felt his flagship shudder as the human weapons found their mark. Emergency lights flashed across the bridge as his ship's main systems began to fail one by one. "Damage report," he demanded, his voice carrying a note of panic that his crew had never heard before. "Primary engines offline," Lieutenant Zephrian reported. "Communication systems are failing. Life support is holding, but barely." The reality of the situation was becoming clear to every Zephrian in the fleet. They were not fighting a primitive world that had been caught unprepared. They were fighting a civilization that had been planning this exact scenario for decades, and every aspect of their invasion had been anticipated and countered. On Earth's surface, the battle had transformed from a desperate defense into a coordinated offensive. Human forces that had been hidden in underground bunkers emerged to reveal weapons and vehicles that matched or exceeded anything the Zephrians possessed. Cities that had appeared to be civilian targets were revealed as military installations disguised to look harmless. Colonel Nancy Price led her ground forces out of the hidden facility beneath Denver, her soldiers equipped with armor and weapons that had been developed specifically for fighting alien invaders. "Remember your training?" she told her troops as they moved toward the Zephrian landing sites. "These things have never fought anyone who knew they were coming." The Zephrian ground forces found themselves facing human soldiers who seemed to know exactly how to counter every weapon and tactic in their arsenal. Worse, the humans appeared to be immune to the psychological warfare that had broken the will of 11 previous civilizations. "They show no fear," reported Captain Deximer from his position on the ground near what had once been Chicago. "We have demonstrated our superior firepower, but they continue to advance. This is not normal behavior for a conquered species." The truth was that humanity had spent decades studying Zephrian tactics through intercepted communications and careful observation of their previous conquests. Every human soldier had been trained to recognize alien weapons. Every pilot had studied Zephrian flight patterns, and every commander had memorized the enemy's standard operating procedures. Dr. Robert Kim monitored the battle from his position in the deep underground facility, watching as human forces systematically dismantled the Zephrian invasion force. "They'd built their entire military doctrine around fighting species that panic," he explained to General Rodriguez. "They have no protocols for dealing with organized resistance." The Zephrian fleet attempted to retreat but found their escape routes blocked by human ships that had somehow predicted their movements. Admiral Vextar realized with growing horror that his fleet was trapped in a cage that the humans had been building around them since the moment they entered the solar system. How did they know? He whispered to Captain Zolkith. How did they know exactly where we would go? The answer came from Ambassador John Patterson, whose voice was broadcast directly to the Zephrian flagship. We have been watching you for a very long time, Admiral. Every signal you sent, every communication you made, every tactical decision you implemented in your previous conquests. We studied you like scientists study insects. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Zephrian command. The humans had been observing their military operations for decades, learning their weaknesses and preparing countermeasures for every possible scenario. You followed the same attack patterns you used on 11 other worlds? Patterson continued. You made the same demands, used the same formations, and expected the same result. The difference is that we were ready for you. Admiral Vexstar watched his tactical display as more human ships appeared from hiding places throughout the solar system. His fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and completely surrounded by an enemy that had been preparing for this battle longer than some of his crew had been alive. Sir, Captain Zolkith said quietly, what are your orders? Admiral Vexstar looked around his damaged bridge, at the crew members who had followed him through 12 successful conquests, and realized that their winning streak was about to end in the most devastating way possible. Prepare a surrender message, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, and send a priority communication to the homeworld. Tell them what we have learned here. The message he would send would change the course of galactic history. Humanity was not a primitive species to be conquered, but a civilization that had been quietly preparing to defend itself and others from the threats that lurk in the darkness between the stars. The Galaxy Council chamber had never seen anything like what was happening on their main display screens. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as they watched the Zephrian Empire, conquerors of 12-star systems, surrender to a world they had dismissed as primitive just days before. Ambassador Kreoloth stood at his station, his compound eyes reflecting the blue light from the holographic displays showing Earth's solar system. Around him, delegates whispered in their native languages, their voices creating a low hum of disbelief that filled the massive chamber. Impossible, breathed Ambassador Talanuk of the Rigel Consortium, his tentacles writhing with agitation. The Zephrians have the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy. Had, corrected Ambassador Yeldair of the Vegan Trade Union. Look at those tactical displays. The human forces have surrounded and disabled the entire invasion fleet without destroying a single ship. That level of precision requires military planning beyond anything we have seen. On the screens, they watched as human ships moved with coordinated efficiency, herding the damaged Zephrian vessels toward Earth's moon, where massive holding facilities had somehow been constructed in secret. Every movement was calculated, every action part of a larger plan that had clearly been in development for decades. Ambassador Kreoloth activated his communication system and addressed the assembled council. Honored delegates, we are witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic politics. The species we believe to be isolated and primitive has demonstrated military capabilities that rival or exceed our most advanced civilizations. Admiral Vexstar sat in the detention facility that had been carved into Earth's moon, staring through the transparent aluminum window at the blue planet that had destroyed his career and his empire's reputation. Around him, thousands of Zephrian prisoners were housed in conditions that were comfortable but secure, their captors treating them with a level of dignity that surprised him. A human guard approached his cell, a young woman wearing the uniform of Earth's military. Admiral, Ambassador Patterson wants to speak with you. Admiral Vexstar looked up at the guard, noting the lack of hatred or fear in her expression. Throughout his conquests, the captured populations had always looked at him with terror or rage. This human simply looked professional. Very well, he replied, following the guard through corridors that had been built with the specific purpose of housing alien prisoners. Everything about the facility suggested long-term planning, as if the humans had always known they would need a place to keep captured invaders. Ambassador John Patterson sat across from Admiral Vexstar in a simple, conference room, his hands folded on the metal table between them. He was an older human with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. Behind him stood Dr. Rachel Kim, a woman who wore the uniform of Earth's intelligence service. "Admiral," Patterson began, his voice carrying no hint of triumph, or anger, "I want you to understand something important. This was not personal. We did not fight your fleet because we hate the Zephrian people. We fought because you chose to invade our home." Admiral Vexstar studied the human's face, searching for signs of deception or hidden malice. "You have been watching us for decades. You knew we would come." "We knew someone would come," Dr. Kim replied. "We have been monitoring galactic communications for over 60 years. We observed your conquests, your methods, your technology. We knew that eventually some aggressive species would decide that Earth looked like an easy target." Patterson leaned forward slightly. "What you need to understand, Admiral, is that we never wanted to fight you. We wanted to be left alone to develop in peace. But when that became impossible, we chose to be ready." The conversation was being broadcast live to the Galaxy Council, where delegates watched with fascination as the humans explained their perspective. It was unlike anything they had ever heard from a victorious military force. "You studied us like specimens," Admiral Vexstar said, his voice carrying a note of bitter respect. "You knew exactly how we would attack when we would attack and what we would do when our initial assault failed." "We studied everyone," Patterson corrected. "Every species in the galaxy that possessed faster-than-light travel. We learned your languages, your customs, your military doctrines. We knew that if we ever made contact with galactic civilization, we needed to be prepared for any possibility." Dr. Kim activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy with dozens of trade routes and communication networks highlighted in different colors. "What you see here is 60 years of patient observation. We placed monitoring stations throughout this sector disguised as natural phenomena. We listened to your communications, watched your fleet movements, and learned everything we could about how galactic politics actually work." Admiral Vexstar stared at the display, finally understanding the scope of what the humans had accomplished. "You have been preparing for galactic contact since before my hatching." "Since before your grandfather's hatching?" Patterson replied. "The moment we realized we were not alone in the universe, we began asking ourselves one question: how do we ensure that humanity survives in a galaxy full of species more advanced than ourselves?" "And your answer was to become the most dangerous species in the galaxy," Admiral Vexstar said. Patterson shook his head. "Our answer was to become the most prepared species in the galaxy." "There is a difference." The distinction was not lost on the delegates watching from the Galaxy Council chamber. Species after species had tried to solve the problem of galactic survival through conquest, alliance, or isolation. Humanity had chosen a fourth option: preparation. Ambassador Kreoloth addressed the council as the broadcast continued. "What we are seeing here is unprecedented. A species that achieved military superiority not through aggression, but through patience and planning. The humans have become powerful not by conquering others, but by preparing to defend themselves." "But what do they want?" asked Ambassador Morkith of the Centauri Federation. "What are their intentions toward the rest of the galaxy?" The answer came from Patterson himself, speaking directly to Admiral Vexstar, but knowing that his words were being heard across the galaxy. "We want what we have always wanted, Admiral: to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But we have learned that peace must be defended." He paused, looking directly at the camera that was broadcasting to the Galaxy Council. "We extend an offer to all civilized species in the galaxy. Trade with us, communicate with us, share knowledge and culture with us. But understand this: Earth is our home, and we will defend it from anyone who threatens it." Dr. Kim added, "We also offer our protection to any species that faces the same threats we prepared for. Humanity has learned how to defend against aggressive expansion. We are willing to share that knowledge with those who need it." The Galaxy Council erupted in discussion as delegates realized what they were hearing. Humanity was not just offering to join galactic civilization. They were offering to become its protectors. Admiral Vexstar looked at the two humans across from him and finally understood what had happened. His empire had not just failed to conquer a primitive world. They had awakened a sleeping giant that would reshape the entire galaxy. "You chose to invade Earth," Patterson said quietly. "And in doing so, you introduced humanity to the galaxy. I suspect that future historians will mark this as the moment when everything changed. The age of galactic conquest was ending, and the age of galactic protection was about to begin."